Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking about Assassin's Creed 3. So, yeah, this is the third installment in the series. I mean, technically, you've had a bunch of spin offs like Chronicles and Brotherhood and Revelations, and even, I know Rogue came out after this one. But yeah, this was a big step in this series, and I'm not sure how that step is. I think if you ask the average person, that Assassin's Creed 3 was very okay. It was very just, well, frankly odd. It was hard to really say exactly what it is about this game that is wrong or is good, but it just felt like a very okay kind of experience, and I'm not really sure what else to say about it, but I'll go into the specifics of the game itself. So a big, big leap. We've gone from Middle Ages, Holy Land to Renaissance Italy and to the American Revolution with firearms. That's definitely the last thing I've had on my mind where we were going. It is really interesting how this game is structured, because I think there are parts of it that are incredibly strong and then parts of it that are just incredibly garbage. The main thing is, so similar to the beginning of Assassin's Creed 2, you basically play as a completely different character for the first part, and you switch to another character partway through. And I think, to me, this is what I really didn't like about it. I know some people really complain about Halo 2 and having played as Arbiter, and Halo or Metal Gear Solid 2 and having played as Raiden. This was kind of my experience. I never really minded those games, but I really did mind the fact that, you start the game playing as this guy called Hathan Kenway, who is like this arrogant British nobility who is basically, an assassin of sorts, and he ends up, essentially, you start off in this opera house, and he ends up assassinating this guy, and he's this very posh, gentleman, but he's also incredibly deadly and dangerous and stuff. And I just absolutely love his character. And then throughout the story, we meet his. Have to play as a son, who is a consequence of him and a Native woman. Native American, that is. And so you have to play as his son, Connor. And once you start playing as Connor, I mean, it's not terrible off the bat, but all the charisma from the character is completely gone. And the only reason I kept playing was to see what becomes of his final confrontation with his father. And I mean, as a father-son story, it actually is very interesting and very cool and well written. So you end up playing the first bit as Hathan and his colleagues. He ends up, recruiting them, creating a small organization, I would say, and they kind of go from England and sail to the New World, to Boston, and are creating a new kind of order in order to control the New World and basically become its masters. And you go on a bunch of assassination missions, recruiting certain people of stature and notoriety, until eventually you come to the end of Hathan's journey, only to find out he's in fact a Templar, not an assassin. And that's a huge twist in the story, I guess, but not really a huge one, since it happens pretty early on. And then you have to play as his son Connor, and basically, they end up having a disagreement and end up fighting. The other characters that, of course, Connor recruits, they're very interesting, but the funny switcheroo is that you will spend the scope of the game assassinating the characters you recruited as Hathan. The main antagonist in this game is the British Empire and the Redcoats, who essentially are the colonial force in colonial America. And in order to fight for independence, you basically have to take them out. And they had this whole, trailer and, this whole big, lead up. And, the hype around this game was really insane. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because it was like the Americans defeating the British. I don't know. I don't know why, but it was very intense feeling. Also, it's interesting that this is done by a French Canadian company, so a pro-American message is not something that it's not like it's banned or anything, but it's not something typically you'd expect them to do. But they definitely had that going for them, where it was going to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna kick the British out of North America, boys. It was there was a lot of hype around it, basically. This game also introduces a few new mechanics. Something that's very different is that because something that honestly is very lame, frankly, is that because you are in colonial America, there is not a lot of things to climb. There are no giant church steeples or interesting geometry. It's pretty much the same kind of basic church steeple or like military base over and over and over again. There's not a lot of variety. There's not a lot of difference between different areas of the world and of the map. Again, it's more story and character focus, which I think is good. It's a nice shift. But then they introduce things where like you have to get resources to build a ship, and then the ship itself, it is saleable. But then you really see that in Black Flag, where the ship mechanic becomes the main thing that they wanted to focus on. Again, you have all the previous things of managing your assassins from your homestead. You now are situated in the wilderness, essentially, in the countryside of America, where you have a colonial-style house where you run your operations from. Connor, his main thing is he has a bow and arrow, which allows him to, of course, take out enemies silently. And there's a very cool introduction, of course, the musket, which can be fired, not reloaded, because that would take too long in this game. I guess gamers don't have patience. And it can also be used as a bayonet weapon, which I think is really cool. Also, you can find a stack of them and basically use them, fire them off one after another. But of course, as you fire that will alert the enemies in the area, and you will be under attack very quickly. Some of the areas in this game, of course, Boston and New York. There are some areas that are only for specific story events, which is I think pretty new. That they can just make an area that's like, okay, we'll never see this again. Now that they've become very advanced, with their gameplay. Another new thing is hunting for animals. I'm not sure if Red Dead Redemption came out before or after this, but it was very similar to that kind of style of game. You basically would, see something, maybe put out bait, but you'd be able to, attack it, get its pelt or hide, and then sell it, at a trading post for money. Another interesting thing, because of course you are in North America, a lot of the geometry you will be climbing on is actually trees and wilderness. And so there's a distinct, I like to call it Ubisoft tree. The Ubisoft tree, which is structured just so that you can jump through the middle of it and is perfectly made for an assassin to walk along. And I found it very funny and humorous. But yeah, this is the point in the series where the amount of options that we're getting is almost a little bit overwhelming. It's like, why would I use a knife over a bow and arrow or a musket? Or like, there's so many different options. It's a little bit overwhelming. And then I feel like, sadly, there's stuff in this game that is just in there for the sake of it. And it doesn't really feel balanced. It feels imbalanced, where there's a bunch of different stuff all doing its own thing, and all of it or none of it is really working together. You just kind of default to the same old thing that you usually do. There's no big difference. That being said, one of my favorite weapons, maybe of all time, is in this game, which is the rope dart. I don't know why, but like the fact that you can use this thing to take out enemies from afar and use it as a stealth item, but really, the fact you can use it to hang guys from trees is just, I think, such an awesome, cool thing. I don't know why, it just feels like such a evil, badass thing to do, and it's just not a mechanic you usually see in games in general. Of course, Connor has his iconic tomahawk and other weapons with him, but the big thing now really is muskets and gunpowder and these kind of new inventions, which again, I was just shocked that Assassin's Creed was going to be in colonial America of all places, from the ancient civilizations of Europe and the Middle East. Again, it is rather fun. You will come across British redcoat outposts, and part of your mission and objective is essentially, these big military bases. You have to steal something from them, or you will have to go into them and take them all out. And that can be a lot of fun, how you plan out taking out, this base in order to get its loot. Can be a lot of fun. It reminds me almost of Metal Gear Solid 5, where you might come across a similar or the same outpost a few times in the game, and you might have to strategize, okay, how am I going to take out this area and then this area and not get alerted? And of course, you always do get alerted, and then eventually you're going to have to, go loud and deal with the situation as it unfolds. And this game, really, the hub worlds are kind of gone. It feels like the entire world, because again, like, it's rural colonial America, there is not a lot of different scenery. It's all very much the same, and because of that, there's no very iconic place, except really maybe like the Boston Harbor or certain places in New York, stuff like that. And then I might be getting New York mixed up with Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is the game that came out after this, where you played the Canadian side of the conflict, which I thought was really interesting. And you actually play, again, as a Templar, if I recall correctly. Rogue was a game where they basically did the same thing here. Again, it felt like over-glorified DLC, where you're sailing around the coast of Canada and the Arctic, and I believe you are tracking down one of Hathan's old associates, trying to find the Piece of Eden. And what was really important, I think, about that game is the fact that your ship actually had a lot more ship combat now, and you can really see how they developed that into Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which I might as well talk about at this point, because it's really funny / sad that that was the last title Assassin's Creed game, and the 4 was actually so small that they just focused on the fact that you play as a pirate. I think it was after 3 that we really saw the shift of this game story to just being a guy in a time period and not worrying about the overall message of the main story, which I will get to now. So, while Desmond has been getting a progressively deader and deader wet sock of a character, the developers, I guess, kind of acknowledge that, and were just so almost fed up with him himself that no major, major spoilers, but Desmond basically dies in this game. Or it's heavily implied that he does. The way this game ends is, again, you're on the run from Abstergo, and, they realize that a Native American tribe has, stored a Piece of Eden somewhere in one of their caves in North America, and you realize that's what they're looking for, and you finally pinpoint that cave itself. All this stuff happens, and, I don't care. No one cares. It's just not an interesting... The way it's done is not interesting. They did try to branch out, so in the modern day, there are a few missions where you actually play as Desmond. In the modern day, for some godforsaken reason, you don't even have a hidden blade with you or a gun or anything. You just sneak around and parkour and find these tapes around the environment. And then they have this whole inner monologue and these weird scenes where how do I even describe this? You have these scenes where essentially Desmond is going through his memories, and it's about his life as a 20-year-old bartender and his life before Abstergo, and it's just bland. It sucks. It's stupid. And basically at the end of this game, he basically dies at this. This giant flash happens. They're like, I don't know, we'll kill him. I know, we'll forget it in the next game. And sure enough, he's just gone. He's dead. And that whole sort of modern story is now just gone. They've just given up on it. And I just felt that was, I don't know, lazy, bad, stupid. They could have at least kept it going and at least made it go somewhere. You didn't have to completely kill the guy, but yeah, he was pretty bland and boring. And no one really liked those parts with the Desmond in that series. So there's that, I guess. Again, in terms of gameplay, this is the game that also introduced the kill streak mechanic. So once you kill one guy, you go on to the next one, and so on. Again, besides that, you still have interesting enemy types. You now have a lot more ranged enemies, obviously. But since it's not quite modern day, it makes sense that you'd still be able to go close to quarters combat with them. And of course, in this game, there are famous characters like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and General Lafayette and all those guys. Again, though, it's funny and it's sad that again the hype for this game was so humongous, but really it is the weakest of its kind of the installments. This is really where the series kind of died for me, and I think for a lot of people. I think people who were like suckered in, or not suckered in, but were interested in the the pirate mechanics of the fourth one, like, oh, I can be an assassin pirate now, that's so cool, or like a ninja pirate thing. Yeah, let's do that. I think they came back for that, and then I'm just not sure what happened to the series after that, which I might as well talk about now. It's just very odd that essentially after Black Flag there was Rogue and I think maybe a few other games, but essentially what happened along that line was what was it? It was Assassin's Creed Origins came out, and it was this, the origin of the Assassin Order, and the biggest problem about it is they completely changed all of the gameplay. It became a RPG system where it wasn't turn-based, but all your stats and everything were, upgradable. And even though it was open world, there's certain enemies who had levels now. And suddenly this whole world is meant to be a huge grind fest. And I just thought, and Desmond's not part of it. I mean, I don't need Desmond to be part of it, but I need an overarching story besides, I like the fact that we're in a simulated version of reality and not reality itself. And the truth of the matter is that that's just not the case. They kind of branch out to like, okay, you're just some ancient Egyptian guy, like whatever. And that whole whatever attitude, I just never clicked with it. It's like, well, how's his story? And it's like, again, whatever. Like, don't worry about the story. Just be a guy in ancient Egypt and grind these points. Climb these places, see these sites. The whole direction for Assassin's Creed went into, absolutely into the tank after that. Oh yeah, and of course there was also Unity, which was the French one, and Syndicate, which was the British one. And I think Origins came out. But those two games, again, I think it was getting to the point where Assassin's Creed, they were releasing like a game almost every year. And I guess from the colonial perspective, it's interesting now that I really see it. In the sense that from Assassin's Creed 2 we got Brotherhood and Revelations, and from Assassin's Creed 3 we got essentially Unity and Syndicate, which is around the same time period as well. Again, I felt like once they dropped the numbers, I kind of felt like, okay, so unless I really want to be the main assassin or that setting or just, do that story, then I won't bother. And what I saw is that Ubisoft became a very derivative company where you would go into these areas or these, these time frames, but you would just do Ubisoft stuff. You would just be, okay, collect the things, kill the guys, do whatever. And it seems like the story just did not matter whatsoever. And when story does not matter at all, and presentation or whatever, when the game looks like it plays exactly like the last one, and when no one really liked Assassin's Creed 3, I was very much like, okay, so what are we doing here? What's the point? And I'm pretty sure that's why a lot of people kind of fell off the bandwagon. Even people who played Assassin's Creed 4 and were real fanboys up until that point, I think after Black Flag, they kind of were like, oh, okay, that was cool, but there was no reason to really go to the next one. And again, like they said it, they called it 4, so it was like, oh, this is the next big thing, and they just added ships and stuff. Again, none of these games are necessarily bad, but they're just the same thing I've played, and they don't have enough character or music or presentation to justify it being a full new experience. I've played a little bit of Black Flag. Again, like I don't need ship combat. It doesn't really interest me. What interests me is the setting of the thing. If it was an Assassin's Creed game where that was the only thing you could do, then maybe that'd be interesting, like a ship to ship combat only kind of thing. But they kind of burrow in and bring out everything else that we're used to, and it looks like the same game, and like the characters don't seem super interesting. So I'm like, why would I bother? Also, the fact they introduced the whole kill streak thing, I mean, it's fine, but I don't know, it just feels like I'm grinding through everything. And again, by the time Origins came out, Origins is the ultimate grind. I played the beginning part of it a little bit, and I was severely disappointed. The main thing is the fact that now you have to. They changed the jumping in it, where you don't auto jump anymore. Where running off a cliff, you have to press A to climb and jump. And there's just something about it that just feels really wrong. Also, from someone I talked to who did play the whole thing, they basically said, yeah, they regret actually doing all the side quests and playing as much as they did of Origins, because it was a grind with nothing else to do. I find that very telling and very unfortunate. But yeah, where the Assassin's Creed series stands today is on uncertain waters. I've heard that some of them are okay, but really, 1 and 2, 1 has the biggest mood, 2 has the best gameplay and pretty comparable, and 3, again, the beginning parts with Haytham are amazing and fun and interesting, and then you just play as this like native guy or half native guy just doing a bunch of very grindy stuff, and what can I say? It's very repetitive and boring. And even those whole like conspiracy mini games with the Apple of Eden and all that stuff, that's gone too. So I felt like they almost dumbed down this kind of game. They kind of appeal to the whole American market with the whole, you can kill the British in this, and it kind of appealed to like a more normie audience. I feel as that's what happened. And I just stopped caring for the franchise whatsoever. I will say though that the way this game ends is pretty appropriate and spectacular. The way Haytham and Connor kind of meet their ends respectively is honestly super, super cool and super appropriate. There's a lot of fun missions where you have to get drunk with this Irish guy. You have to warn the Americans the British are coming, and all this other stuff, and how Ben Franklin with some random BS. But yeah, it's an okay game where it has really high points, and then like what feels like 80% of it is just drag and grind, and then 20% is actually really interesting and good. And it's really hard for me to recommend a game that has a structure like that or a quality like that. If they had cut out a lot of this game, I think it would actually be better overall. But it is what it is, and yeah, it's a weird place where Assassin's Creed is in right now, because after Origins, they did Ancient Greece Odyssey, which was kind of cool, and then they did Valhalla, which is also again fairly cool. And I tried both of those; they were on Game Pass, and again, they're just like, yep, this sure is a Viking, or this sure is what I expect. Ancient Egypt or Ancient Greece. It was like, yep, this is exactly what I thought it would be. There's nothing interesting or artistic or surprising about any of these settings. And in fact, there's things that are like interesting. Like the fact that they had some controversy where they had this thing where they put women in the Greek areas of learning where they historically were not supposed to be there, and they even put that in their own notes saying, hey, we women are, here's the symposium and blah blah blah, and women are depicted here even though historically that's inaccurate. So it started becoming this thing where they stopped even caring about their own historical settings and just wanted to have just like it became a point where Ubisoft game became a list of checkboxes. Does it have a viewpoint? Does it have collectibles? Does it have an epic combat system? It just became extremely derivative and boring and not very good at all. And it's a real shame, frankly. And now where the franchise sits is really uncertain. They're kind of just doing different historical areas and just saying, whatever, this is the next one, eat it up. And I guess they have their loyal band of UB drones or whatever that keep playing Assassin's Creed, even if it's Assassin's Creed, you know, Northern Siberia in the year zero, the people will play it. I guess like it doesn't matter what it is as long as it's Assassin's Creed. But yeah, that's an unfortunate state of affairs, I suppose. And the other thing that really bugged me about the new Assassin's Creed game is they have cursor interfaces. So even if you're playing on console, you have to move the control stick around to actually select your thing. And it just shows how they're making it as a, like, they're just making a game for everyone, and it's fine, but it feels like it's done in a pandery way. And the fact that, you know, modern game design, I swear to God, if there is on the main menu a tab for shop, it just is the biggest turnoff in the world for me, because it's just like, it does not matter what the game is about, because as soon as you start charging people for like useless crap to make money, it just feels wrong. It feels bad. And sure enough, on, you know, the shop for, what was it, Odyssey, they had this whole thing where you can get, you know, the epic Sparta skin pack and all this other like super epic stuff, and it's just kind of, it's very invasive and in your face, and I really don't mind it if it wasn't just so public and pushed. You know, we used to have things hidden behind the Xbox marketplace, and that's where the things just, you know, were kept, and they stayed there, and it wasn't a big deal because it was kind of not super advertised, I think is the word. It's, you know, it's not the fact you can spend the money, it's the fact that it's advertised you should. And it's like, no, I'm actually trying to play a game here. Frustrating you want me to do that, but that is modern game design, and Assassin's Creed has fallen into that as well. Anyway, I think that's all I can really say about it at this point. But yeah, this is kind of where the beginning of the end began. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about it. That's the end. See you guys. Bye.